Hi, this is Eugenia Mitchell, host of At Home with the Mitchells. Thanks for listening to the following podcast on Public House Media.
If you read the title of the podcast episode today, it's called Trauma Triggers. And with this topic, I feel like I sat a really long time on it. It was like curling up on my father's lap and asking him what he wanted me to share with all of you. And I feel like I sat and I sat and I sat. And if you're anything like me, sitting and just being still is sometimes really hard. It's hard just to be, because I feel like when I do, sometimes doubt and fear creeps in. But as I was sitting and as I was waiting to feel a nudge or feel a pull in one way or another, I thought about Katie, and I thought about Holly, and I thought about Kim and Brianna and Anna and other people who've opened up to me via email the last couple weeks. And if you haven't reached out yet via email, please do. I would love to get you on my email list. That's invitedpodcastphm@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. But I've just had so many emails sent to me the last couple of weeks, and I thought about all those people and all those stories and all those testimonies and the way that these messages have spoke to them. And reading those messages over, I'm reminded why I need to share this message with you. So today's topic, like I said, is all about trauma triggers. Trauma triggers stimulate your brain, and they actually prompt a recall of different past traumas that you may have encountered. It could be a scent or a song or the way someone reacts. It could be an exerted behavior. There are so many ways that these triggers can happen. Traumas that you experience do leave imprints on your brain. And that's psychological, that's science. They leave these imprints on your brain. And when something happens in your life today, in current time, they can prompt you to actually be triggered. And it's worth looking at. Definitely. It's worth reflecting over and learning how to lessen the hit, maybe. Sometimes it's just lessening the hit that these trauma triggers have in your life, or sometimes removing them altogether from occurring in your life. So I'm not sitting here as a therapist or the scientist or anything like that. You're not going to get that here. But I'm a girl who has a past of traumatic experiences, and I believe in God's power of deliverance in my own life and in the lives of others that have walked in similar paths that I have. So most of these trauma triggers, for me personally, and I know that might not be the same for you, but for me, they revolve around abandonment, sometimes not feeling good enough, and losing control. And those were the three big topics, I would say, that can kind of summarize most of the triggers that I've had in my life. But I'm sure there are more that I haven't fully discovered about myself, and I'm sure there's other categories that trauma triggers creep in for you. But the first way to attack these trauma triggers is knowing what they are. I've spent a lot of years in my adulthood just trying to decipher where these come from. I want to be in tune with myself. I want to know myself better, and I'm on the journey to do so. And knowing myself better, I'm able to figure out where these are coming from, and I'm able to try to attack those trauma triggers when they come. So I want you to be able to do that too. Discovering your trauma triggers is so important so that you can attack those trauma triggers. So I want you to think about what some of those trauma triggers might be for you, or what are the areas where you feel most triggered with your relationships and your circumstances. For me, I have a hard time with quick changes. I also have a hard time not knowing the full plan. So if there is an expectation about how the day is supposed to go and it changes really quickly, that's very hard for me. And I see a lot of trauma triggers creep in when that happens. And it's not realistic to expect that plans aren't going to change. So I need to work on myself, and I need to heal in this way to help myself understand and come back when I'm triggered in this way, and not knowing the full plan. I like to know the big picture. Trauma triggers also can come in when people leave without warning. So if somebody leaves and I don't know that they're going to leave, I feel those trauma triggers click in for me, and I react to those in unhealthy ways. Other ways for me are when actions are taken without me having an approval behind them. Other things are I have trouble delegating. Delegating sometimes pops up triggers in my life. Not being shown love in return is one for me. Not feeling heard. And then also certain smells and songs elicit those trauma triggers for me as well. So those are just some I want to go into, and I'm going to go into further detail about a few of these on this list as a way to help you navigate what yours might be in just a second here. But I want to share these with you. So like I said, you can navigate yours, but also start to walk into deliverance from them. And that's what I'm really about. And that's what I really want to share with you. So if you have a past of trauma and you're listening to this, maybe you've already listened to episode 1 and 2. And if you haven't yet, I urge you to go back and listen to those as well. But if you have a past of trauma, let's look at a breakdown of some steps that I came up with that can help us together move forward towards that deliverance. So the first step, number 1, is think about what causes you pain or unsettled thoughts, fear or anger-based reactions, and maybe what causes you to want to shut down or pull away. For trauma triggers, those are some of those reactions that might happen when those triggers come into place. You're going to feel pain. You're going to feel something inside you that is uncomfortable or unsettled. Sometimes they're like irrational fears. I know I can get really angry when I'm triggered, or also sometimes just wanting to shut down and pull away from relationships too. So think about what actually caused that. You have to be really understanding of yourself. You need to be able to, in that moment, stop where you're at and think about what the actual trigger was. So that's step number 1. Number 2, sink into the times that you felt that way. Take yourself back to the moments that probably did trigger that. So that takes some peeling back of layers for sure. And I'm not expecting that you're able to think about what is causing you pain and react all in the same foul swoop. So don't think that that's going to happen. It's going to take time. Sometimes you might feel a certain way, you know you're being triggered, but number 2 is not going to work right in that moment. You're not going to be able to pinpoint back to an actual experience that you're able to feel that. I urge you then, if you really don't know what it was that triggered you, to write it down. So if you're, for example, if you're maybe with a significant other and they say something and it triggers you, I want you to sit down right away and in a journal, in a notebook, or even pull up the notes app on your phone, write what they did and how it made you feel, and start thinking when, in a healthy moment, think about what times in your life you may have felt that way before, and you can start actually making connections to why you might have felt that way in that moment, if that makes sense. And if you need clarification on that, please feel free to email me. I hope that makes sense. But you're trying to form in steps 1 and 2 connections between how you're feeling when you were triggered and what past experiences that you had that caused pain that was similar. Okay. And then step number 3, identify the transfer that is being made from those experiences to your life today. So you're identifying where they came in, what you're relating it to, and how it's surfacing now. Step number 4 is talk to someone about it. Okay, so once you figured it out in your own brain, make sure you're being real. You're coming to someone, you're being vulnerable, you're sharing why it hurts, and you are talking about all the feelings, as hard as it might be, as weird as it might be, even though that person's not going to understand because they've never walked where you're walking, they've never been there before. Talk to someone about it. Talk to somebody and get those thoughts out. And every single time I do that, I feel like it loses control of my life. I talk it out, and those words and those experiences start to slowly chisel away and lose power in my life. Okay, so talk to someone. Number 5, let all those feelings, everything that you just did in steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 fall at God's feet and just sit on your daddy's lap, just like how I explained it in the beginning of this episode. I need to sometimes just sit on my daddy's lap and realize who he is and realize whose I am, and just lay those feelings at his feet. that's what I did, like I said, when I brainstormed for this content. And I love in 2 Corinthians 1:3-4, it says, "Praise be to God and the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves received from God." So we're able to sit on his lap and we're able to bask in his compassion and his comfort whenever we're feeling like these trauma triggers are surfacing, whenever we're feeling maybe attacked or not understanding our own bodies or our own reactions, that we can rest in his compassion and his comfort. So we can come to him when we have those troubles, we can receive that comfort, and then we can heal so we can help other people also receive that comfort. It's pretty beautiful. So that was number 5. And number 6 is know that these trauma triggers will show up again. Please brace yourself and know you don't need to be on guard every second of every day, wondering when you're going to be triggered again. I'm not saying that, but just know that even if you're working on a certain trauma trigger, there's certain triggers that I've been working on for years and I just feel like I still can't shake them. And if that's you and you've been on this journey of understanding maybe everything I've said so far you've already tried, just know that you're not failing and you're not losing if those triggers come up again and again, because they do. Sometimes they go away for good. Sometimes they creep back in. But they're going to lose their power over time, and your story will be used for God's glory. And God doesn't cause, side note, God doesn't cause bad things to happen. So I just want to reassure you that that's not from God. The things that have happened to you are not from him. He doesn't want to see his people, his beautiful daughters, suffer, but we're human and we live in a human world and we will suffer here. But just to give you more comfort, another verse that I love is Romans 5:3-4, and it says, "Not only so, but we also give glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, character, and character hope." And I love those verses because it's for the people who don't want to remain there. The people who are listening to this podcast and you actually want to heal from your past experiences and you want to find that deliverance, and you know that the things that you've gone through are part of your journey, but you don't have this victimhood that you carry around. You know that it's not your identity. I just think that's so beautiful that it produces perseverance, and that perseverance, through that you get that character, and through building character, you're able to have hope. And it doesn't bring me joy at all that you've experienced these traumas in your life. And I don't love that you and I are united in that way. If you're listening to this podcast and it relates to you, I don't love that. But it does bring me joy seeing layers fall off in your life. And I hope these episodes are helping you with that. They can be part of your journey. And it does bring me joy that your story is being shared and a means to heal, being able to see your perseverance, being able to hear through email how the chains are falling off, things that you're learning about yourself, gut checks each week. That brings me joy, and watching it all be used in a way that can produce hope for others to see how God will carry them through this world's hard moments too. It's just all beautiful to me. So the pain doesn't bring me joy, but watching you heal does. And your story matters so much to him. You can use these steps that I was able to share today just to kind of guide you through that process. It's very choppy. It's not scientific, like I said. It's not research. These are just things that have helped me. And you can guide yourself through those 6 steps over and over again, as many times as you need to. But your story matters so much to God. And I want to remind you of that today, wherever you are on the journey, and you're loved beyond what you can imagine, beyond what I can imagine. And I know that it's so hard to see love in a healthy way. And if you're going to stay tuned into this podcast, next season is all about that, about relationships and relearning what love is. And it's all about the nitty gritty and my past with relearning what love is. But you are loved beyond what you can imagine, beyond what your circumstances have told you, and beyond what you have seen in the past. You know, maybe love is hard for you to wrap your mind around, to be able to embrace, and I get that. I remember when Baxter and I first got married, one of my trauma triggers was that he would sometimes get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom or get a drink of water, and he would do that, and I would wake up realizing that he wasn't in the bed with me, and it was crazy. It was like full on night sweats. I would start shaking. I would start crying uncontrollably. And it's hard to go back to that hard and dark time, but I had this huge fear, even though he was just in another room, that he left, that he wasn't coming back, that he had abandoned me. And that trauma trigger comes from my mom when I was younger would do that, where she would leave in the middle of the night and I would wake up and she wouldn't be there. And she would be gone all night and sometimes for days. And my heart's racing as I'm sharing that with you. It's very vulnerable, and it's something that I've worked a lot on. But it came with communication. It came with following those steps that I told you above, of understanding, okay, where are the connections? Why am I feeling this way? It's okay that I'm feeling this way. Where are they coming from? I need to talk this out loud. Baxter needs to know why I'm acting this way, because I probably look crazy to him, and it's not anything that he's seen before. And I just am praying that he loves me through it. But I share that because we had to work on that. We had to communicate, and I had to let him know where that was all stemming from. And bless his heart, he was just so sweet about, then just telling me, like nudging me softly and letting me know if he was going to leave, even to get a drink of water or go to the bathroom early on in our marriage, because he knew I needed that. I needed that reassurance. And, we slowly started to heal from that. And now we're at a point 5 years into marriage where he doesn't have to tell me that he's getting up in the middle of the night anymore, which is a huge win and a huge victory for Christ. And I'm so thankful for that way that that's healing. But we had to work through that. And my closest friends who know me and love me know that they need to text or call if they're running late. I just so cherish my friends that know that I'm like a time person. And if you're not on time, my brain goes to like the worst possible scenario. I'm still a work in progress, but my friends who know me know that they should just call and just say, hey, I'm running late, or just give me a quick text. But I'm also healing in that way too, and I don't need that as much as I used to. And the last trigger I wanted to just share with you is that I told you that trauma triggers can come through sound. Senses are tied to trauma triggers just so closely so. Like it could be any sense, sight, taste, smell, like that kind of thing. It could be any of those. So when I hear a heart monitor, like at a hospital, I have to like really breathe through that as I'm hearing that sound. Or if it comes up on like a TV show, because I was with my mom when she passed away, and I distinctly remember the moment that the heart monitor went blank, and that sound, and what the sound that I'm probably referring to, but I have to breathe through it when I hear that still. And my mom's been gone. It will be 10 years this August. And I still, that sound makes me cringe, and it's one of my trauma triggers still. But it can be a lot of different things, and you can be triggered through many different senses, just like some of the examples that I shared with you. I know you have your own, and they can come in different ways, and what one person's trauma triggers is not necessarily another person. So you really just have to know yourself and know where these are coming from, and just really be real and talk about them. And I hope that's helping you by me sharing a couple examples to understand and identify what those are in your life. And side note, I think that there's also a lot of people in this world who throw the word triggered around. Like I've heard the word triggered a lot, like, oh, I'm feeling triggered in this way. And a lot of times when people throw that word around, they've never really experienced a trauma. And when they say that they're triggered, they really just mean maybe that they're offended or they're angry. And honestly, I feel like that, this is just my own opinion, but I feel like that really diminishes the severity of what trauma triggers really are, and that they are the psychologically driven thing in place for a person who's endured trauma. So I feel like, side note, that we really need to be sensitive in how this word is used. And how real it truly is to someone who does suffer with traumatic triggers like this. So that's my little side rant on that. So just be really sensitive. If you haven't endured a trauma and you actually aren't having trauma triggers, try not to use the word triggered, because for someone who has endured trauma, that is a real thing. But it all comes down to this. You've been through hard things, and you've suffered trauma, and you're trying to heal. So there's going to be things that trigger you, and there's going to be things that take you back to these memories that you have, and they're real. Okay, so I want to share that you are not alone. These are real, and you might spiral a little bit, and you may feel some hard things. But in those moments, lean in, reflect, talk about it, follow those steps. And I'm here if you need an ear too. You can always reach out to me, and I'm always here to be an ear for you. But most importantly, you have a Father in heaven who wants to have you lay these burdens at his feet and just let him take those on. And you can be delivered from any of the traumatic experiences that you felt. And you're not alone. And I hope that these episodes have just helped you at least feel that you're not alone, and you have other people who are on the journey with you. So let's pray. Dear God, we're talking about a really tough topic today. And in my talking about my traumatic triggers, they probably made other people take a moment to think about some things that they've gone through and some of those triggers that they do feel and they do experience, God. And I just ask you to be with every single person who has gone through different traumas in their life to be able to feel not alone. And when those trauma triggers come in, that it's okay to feel and it's okay to go back there, but going back there is hard. And it can bring back a lot of feelings and a lot of issues and cause them to walk places that they don't ever want to walk again, God. And I just ask you to be with them, to just put a hedge of protection around them mentally and physically and spiritually as they go through the steps of being delivered from their past traumas, that they can understand that that's a part of their journey, but it's not who they are and it's not their identity, and remind them whose they are, that they are yours, God, that they are so loved beyond what they can imagine. And I just ask you to help them follow these steps to healing, to reach out when they need someone to listen, that they can have relationships that can meet them where they're at and that can be there to support them, and that they can just walk along this journey with other people, and that they can lay all these burdens at your feet. God, I'm so sorry for the things that they've gone through. I'm sorry for these moments that have caused these triggers in their life, but I just ask that you heal them little by little, and that you just have them be so proud of where they're at on their journey and continue to nudge them along, that their story can be used for your glory. In your name we pray.